Hello Jambite, I warmly welcome you to this our live class for today. If you are following up, I want you to pay attention and feel free to ask questions. Now, if you are watching this video and you have not been part of this our live class, this is the class through which we use to help first level students, those students that are taking the Jamb UTME exam 2022 to help them prepare for their exam adequately. Now we'll be getting the first 10 questions of the Jamb 2021 past question, a review of the past questions. And since it's a live class, feel free to ask your question and make sure you keep your question till the end of the class so that we can review the question and then answer your question. If you have not subscribed to this channel, I want you to do that now. Hit the subscribe button because the next 10 questions will be answered in another live class, and I want you to be part of that live class. So if you hit the subscribe button, you are going to get an alert of when that live class will be. That will be great. Now, before we resume this class, I want to take you through the instructions you need to have in mind as you prepare to take the Jamb mathematics examination. Now, these are important key points you need to note. One, this examination is going to be a CBT exams. Before you know it, time will truly be against you, and it's going to be a 40 objective questions. Now you'll be required to spend no less than 30 minutes on mathematics question because you'll be given the whole 4 questions, the 4 subjects you'll be taking at a specified hour. So you should know how to minus your minutes for each subject. So maths, I will advise you not to spend more than 30 minutes on mathematics questions. So be prudent in your time using. I suggest you should spend no less than 40 seconds or less in one question. As you review each question, those that are so difficult, please leave them because you have the time to come back to them. Do not rush through those questions. It is better for you to solve 30 questions correctly at the allotted time than to answer all the questions and not getting up to 30 correctly. That's a wise word. No, to do all the possible best you can to pass your exams, and we wish you the best in your exams. Now let's look at the first 10 questions of the 40 questions candidate like you took in the last year Jamb 2021 exams. Now let's go straight to question number 1. Question number 1 says, solve the equation 2 over 2r minus 1 minus 5 over 3 minus 1 over r plus 2. Now, looking at your time and looking how to go about this question, the first thing that should come to your mind is to collect like terms. Now, for us to collect like terms, the first thing you do is what? We'll have our 2 over what? Over 2r minus 1. Yeah, this minus this 1 over r plus 2 will cross over the equal to sign, and when it does that, it becomes what? It becomes minus what? 1 over what? Over r plus what? Plus 2, right? And that will be equal to what? This minus 5 will now cross over to this side to give us what? 5 over what? 5 over 3. Now you've collected your like terms completely. The next thing you have to do is to factorize the left hand side. Now if we factorize this, we'll have 2 factors, 2r minus 1 and r plus what? R plus what? R plus 2. So the next thing we need to do, they are the 2 what? They are the 2 values for the denominators. So you bring them out, and then we are going to look at how we work with them. Now, having gotten this whole value divided by this, this will cut this, and then we'll have this. So this will give us what? 2 over what? R plus what? Plus 2 into bracket minus this whole value divided by this will cut this, then we'll have our 1 into bracket what? Into bracket 2r minus what? Minus 1, and this whole thing will be equal to what? 5 over what? Over 3. Now the next thing you need to do now is to what? Is to simplify the numerator. Remember, this denominator still exists, so we are going to simplify the numerator. To simplify the numerator, we are going to have 2r plus what? Plus 2. So that will give us what? 2r multiplied by everything inside the bracket. That will give us what? 2r times 2 times r will give us 2r plus 2 times 4 will give us what? 2 times 2 will give us what? Plus what? Plus 4. The next thing we'll have is what? You put a minus sign. Minus times 2 minus 1 times 2r will give us minus what? Minus 2r. Minus times minus will give us what? Plus. 1 times 1 will give us what? 1. This will be all over what? All over what? The 2r minus what? Minus 1 into bracket what? R plus what? R plus 2. And this will be equal to what? 5 over what? 3. We have simplified the equation. The next thing we are now going to do now is to what? Is to simplify the numerator. If you simplify this, this will go with this because it's going to be 2r minus what? 2r. We'll be left with plus 4 plus what? Plus 4 plus 1. So 4 plus 1 will give us what? 5. So that whole thing will give us what? 5 over. Now let's simplify this other numerator, this other denominator. If we simplify this other denominator, we're going to have this times this. That will give us what? 2r squared, right? This times this will now give us what? Plus what? Plus 4 what? 4r. Then minus 1 times r will give us minus what? Minus r. Minus 1 times minus 2 will give us what? Minus what? 2. And that will be equal to what? 5 over what? 3. Gradually, we're working through this. So this whole thing will now give us what? Let's work this through. Now, this whole thing will now give us a value. We will now do what? We will now have to do what? We have to what? Cross multiply. Now, if we cross multiply, sorry for that. We will now cross multiply. We're going to have our what? Our 5 into bracket what? This will give us 2r squared. Now plus 4r minus r will give us what? That will give us plus what? Plus 3 what? Plus 3r minus what? Plus minus 2. And that will give us what? 5 times what? 5 times what? 5 times 3. Now, if we go ahead to simplify this further, we're going to get our final value. If we simplify this further, we are going to have 5 into bracket what? 2r squared minus what? Minus 3r minus what? Minus 2. And that will be equal to what? 15. So now let's reduce this. If we divide these two sides by what? By 5, we are going to reduce this value. 5 here will give us what? 3. And 5 here will give us what? 1. So we are going to have our what? 2r squared minus what? Minus 3r minus 2 equal to what? Equal to 3. Now you find out that the equation is being reduced gradually. Now we will now this will finally give us a value. That will give us what? 2r squared minus what? Minus 3r minus what? Minus 2 plus 3 comes over here to give us what? Minus what? Minus 3, and that will be equal to what? 0. Now if we take that as the required value, we are now going to get our final results. Our final result will now be what? Equal to what? 2r squared minus what? Minus 3r. That will give us minus what? Minus 5. And that will be equal to what? 0. So you see, this has given us a quadratic equation. This is not the final result, because if you look at the option, you're going to see that the options are the result of a quadratic equation. So we will now go further to simplify this into a quadratic equation. Now let's clean this part of the screen, and then we're going to now solve that equation. Now we've gotten a quadratic equation. We want to take our time to bring to reduce that quadratic equation. Now finally the quadratic equation we get is what? We've gotten a quadratic equation, and that quadratic equation, don't forget, is 2r squared minus what? Minus 3r minus what? 5. So we have our what? 2r squared minus what? Minus 3r minus 5 equal to what? 0. Now, if you are solving this quadratic equation under examination condition, all you need to do is to look for two values of what? Two values of r, such a way that when you multiply those two values, you are going to have the value that these two values will give you. 2 times what? Times 5 will give us 10. So when we multiply those two values together, we'll get 10. And when we add those two values, we are going to have minus 3. So what are the two values? Those two values will be 5 and what? 5 and 2. 5 times 2 will give us what? 5 times 2 will give us 10. So what sign can we get here? For we to get a minus 10, we are going to have our what? Minus times minus will give you plus. So minus times plus will give us what? Will give us, so we'll have our minus 5 and our plus what? Plus 2. Minus 5 times plus 2 will give us what? Minus 10. And minus 5 plus 2 will give us what? Minus 3. Now you see that the equation is what? Is getting set. So all you need to do, just as you have done, is to what? Is to finalize your equation. 2r squared now will now be equal, will now be plus what? Plus 2r minus what? 5r. That is the value of that breakdown we did, minus what? 5, and that will be equal to what? 0. So having gotten this, we find out that two values are what? Are common here. We bring out the common term, which is 2r, and then that will be 1 plus what? That will be r plus what? R plus 1. Right? Because this times this will give us 2r squared, and this times this will give us 2r. This will now be minus, what is common here? 5 is common. You bring out 5 into bracket minus 5. This will be what? R plus what? Plus 1. Why? 5 minus 5 times r will give us minus 5r, and minus 5 times what? Times 1 will give us what? Minus 5. So you see, we've gotten two common equations. So we will now simplify them. That will give us what? R plus 1, the equation, the values in bracket, and what? 2r minus what? Minus 5. So these both will give us equal to what? 0. So let's see what we'll do to finalize our values. Now to finalize this equation, we are going to get the last values. The last values will now give us what? R plus what? 1 equal to what? 0. If r plus 1 is equal to 0, then our r will be equal to what? Minus 1. Or you have what? Your 2r minus 5 to be equal to 0. Then our 2r will be equal to what? 5. And then our r will now be equal to what? 5 over what? 5 over 2. Now you see now that the two values we have is what? Minus 1 and what? And plus 5 over what? 2. Now if you look at the value very well, A will be what? Will be our result. That's the question for number 1. If you follow this question properly, we're going to now look at question number 2. Now, question number 2 says, in how many ways can 2 students be selected from a group of 5 students in a debating competition? This is a question on permutation and combination. If you check our video channel, you are going to a mathematics video channel, you're going to see a full video on permutation and combination. Now the question is, how do you go about solving this? I want you to recall now, before we go into this, that permutation has to do with, combination has to do with what? Selection, while permutation has to do with what? With arrangement. Now in terms of selection, computation, combination, the order does not necessarily matters. You can arrange your values in any ways. So to solve this, remember that n combination R is equal to what? N permutation R all over what? R what? Factorial. And if you simplify this, we are going to have what? We are going to have our n factorial all over what? All over R factorial into bracket what? N minus what? R what? Factorial. Now, we want to use this equation to solve this value. Now, the number of students is what? The number of students is 5, and we want to select what? 2 students from that what? From that 5 what? Students. So to go about this, we are going to now analyze this in this way. We are going to have our what? 5 combination what? Combination 2 equal to what? Equal to 5 permutation 2 all over what? 2 what? 2 factorial. And that will give us equal, that will be equal to what? That will be equal to 5 factorial all over what? All over 2 factorial. 2 factorial into bracket what? 5 minus what? Minus 2 what? Factorial. Now let's see how we can clear up this to solve this equation. Now that is exactly the value we are going to get as we play along with this. Now let's play along with this and see how we can get the final result on this. Now to get the final result on this will give us what? This will give us equal to 5 factorial will be what? Will be 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times what? 1 all over what? 2 factorial, and what? 5 minus 2 will give us what? 3 what? 3 factorial. Now this will give us the value 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 all over what? All over 2 factorial times what? Times 3 factorial. 3 factorial will be what? 3 times what? 2 times what? 1. So if you come to see, you see that this whole value will clear this whole value. So what we'll have remaining is what? Is 5 times what? Times 4 factorial. 5 times 4 over what? Over 2 what? 2 factorial. Now that will give us what? 5 times 4 is what? Is 20, and 2 factorial is equal to what? 2 times what? 2 times 1. So this will give us what? 20 divided by what? By 2, and that will give us what? 10 what? 10 ways. Now if you look at the options, you're going to find out that the correct option is what? Is B. So you see, this is exactly how you go about solving questions on what? On permutation and what? And combination. Now let's look at the third question. The third question is going to be on hemisphere. Now the third question, question number 3, says what is the rate of change of the volume V of a hemisphere with respect to its radius R? With respect to its radius R, when R is equal to what? When R is equal to what? To 2. Now let's look at how we can solve this question. This question is a question on the volume, and we are going to see how we calculate the volume with respect to what? With respect to R. So whenever you see the rate of change, you should know that they are talking about differentiation. It's something related to calculus, and it has to do with what? Differentiation. Now let's start first of all with what? Let's start first of all with the values of the formula for a hemisphere, the volume of a hemisphere. What's the formula for the volume of a hemisphere? The formula for the volume of a hemisphere, V, is equal to what? Is equal to 2 over 3 by what? By r raised to power what? By r raised to power 3. Now the question says you find the rate of change of the volume with respect to what? With the respect of what? With respect to the radius. So that will give us the v, the r of this whole what? Sorry about that. Of this whole what? Of this whole value. So that will give us what? This will not be differentiated. That will give you 2 over 3 times what? Times pi times what? Times 3 times what? Times r raised to power what? 3 minus 1. Now recall that if you have your y to be equal to what? Axn, the y and the over the x will be equal to what? Will be equal to n a x n minus what? Minus 1. Recall, that is exactly what we did here. So let's clean off this. We don't need this. I'm just trying to take you back, and that's the essence of this class, so that you come to know what we are doing as we go about solving this question. Now let's go back to the question. Now, having differentiated this, we are going to arrive at what? We're going to arrive at our 2 over 3 pi times what? Times 3 times r what? R square. Now this 3 will go away with this 3, so we'll have what? We'll have our 2 pi r what? R square. Now recall that they say you should differentiate with respect to r when r is equal to what? When r is equal to 2. So if our r is equal to 2 and we're going about that differentiation, if we put the value of 2 into this equation, we will now have our what? 2 times what? 2 times pi times what? Times 2 into bracket what? Square. So that will give us what? 2 pi. 2 times 2 will give us what? 4. 2 times 4 will give us what? That will give us what? 8 what? 8 pi. 8 pi. So you see, if you see the values, you are going to find out that option A is what? Option A is our correct what? Is our correct what? Answer. So this option is our correct what? Is our correct answer. So whenever you see any question that has to do with the rate of change, I want you to think about what? Differentiation is under what? Is a topic under what? Under calculus. Now let's look at the next question, question number 4. Now in question number 4, you are required to determine the maximum value of y equals to 3x squared plus 5x minus what? Minus 3. Now this is also a question that has to do with what? With calculus, because under calculus you need to look for the maximum value of any equation and then the what? The minimum what? The minimum value. Now I want you to note something. For at any maximum value, we should note that our what? There are two conditions that must be met for us to determine the value of y at a given value, either maximum or minimum. For us to determine that, there are two conditions that must be met before this can be done. One of those conditions is that the y over the dx must be equal to what? 0. That's one condition. Now another condition is that the y square over what? Over the x square must be what? Must be less than what? Must be less than 0. 1. The y dx must be equal to 0 and the y square over dx square must be what? Must be less than what? Must be less than 0. for a given value to be at a maximum what? At a maximum point. Now let's consider that using this condition. Let's use this condition to analyze that equation we are given. We are given that our y is equal to what? 3x squared plus what? Plus 5x minus what? Minus 3. Now let's find the value for the dy dx. The y dx will now be equal to what? This will be what? 3 times 2x plus what? Plus 5. And that will be equal to what? 6x plus what? 5. So we see the first condition is not met, because for that to be possible, for us to determine the maximum value, the y dx must be equal to what? 0. Now you see that the y dx is not equal to what? 0. Now let's look at the other value. Now the y square over dx square must be less than what? Must be less than 0. That means it must give you a value that is less than 0. Now let's find out. We've done the dy dx now. Now let's look at the y square over what? The dx square of this value, 6x plus what? Plus 5. Now if we find the dy dx, is the y square of this will give us what? This is going to give us what? This is going to give us 6. So you see now that you see now that this value is not less than what? Is not less than 0. Rather, it is greater than what? Is greater than 0. So for this option, we will come to see that the answer D is the answer, because there is no correct what? There is no correct option. Now remember, always remember that if you are given that y is equal to what? Axn, that the y dx of this value is equal to what? Nax n minus what? Minus 1. That's the general formula, and that will give you the value for what? For your differentiation. Always take note of that. So our correct option for this question is what? Is D. Now let's move straight to question number 5. The question number 5 says a trapezium has two parallel sides of length 5 cm and 9 cm. If the area is 91 cm square, find the distance between the parallel side. Now whenever you hear of area, we are talking about what? Square. Whenever you hear of what? Volume, you talk about what? Cube. And whenever you hear of length, we only talk about what? The centimeter. So this will be centimeter square, this will be centimeter cube, and this is just what? Centimeter. Now we have a trapezium. A trapezium is an object with this shape, where you have the height and you have this value to be what? Parallel to what? To this side. So the length, the distance between the parallel side is what? Is the height, h. Now if the trapezium has two parallel sides, length 5 cm, we take this to be 5 cm and this to be what? This to be 9 cm, right? If this is 5 cm and this is 9 cm and the area is 91 cm square, they say you should find the distance between the parallel side. The distance is the what? The height. Now the question is, what is the area of a trapezium? Now the area of a trapezium is equal to, area is equal to what? Half times what? A plus what? Plus B times what? Times height. Now we are given our A to be equal to 5 cm. We are given our B to be equal to 9 cm, and then we are given our area to be equal to 91 what? Centimeter square. We are asked to look for the what? Look for the height. always make sure that you write out this so that you know what you are looking for. That is how we solve mathematics. So if we look at that, we are going to have our a to be equal to 1 over 2 into bracket 5 plus what? Plus 9 height. So that a is what? 91 centimeters square, equal to what? 1 over 2 plus this will give us what? 14 into bracket what? The height. Now if you divide this cut this will give you what? That will give us what? 7. So we are going to have a 91 centimeters square equal to what? 7 what? Equal to 7 what? 7 centimeter h. So our h will now be equal to what? Will now be equal to 91 centimeters square all over what? 7 what? Centimeter. This will cut this square. Remember, if you make h subject of formula, this will come under this. So our h now will now be equal to 91 divided by 7. If you point your calculator, because you'll be allowed to use calculator, you're going to have 13 centimeter, and that is the value for what? That is the value for the height. So your correct option will be what? Option A. Do you get that? So all you need to do now as you prepare for your JAMB, make sure you go and look for all the values of all these parameters. Know what the volume, the area of a trapezium is, the volume, the area of a cube, the volume, the area of all shapes, solid shape and what? And both linear shape. This will help you be able to recover their formula easily when the time comes. Now let's look at question number 6. Now question number 6, we are given this question. We are asked to find the value of P if the line which passes through -1, minus P and what? -2 and 2 is what? Is parallel to the line 2y plus 8x minus 17 equal to what? 0. Now if you are given this kind of question, this question has to do with what? With coordinate what? Geometry. This is a question in coordinate geometry. So if you don't know coordinate geometry, I want you to go and go through coordinate geometry. So in this regard, we are given two parallel lines. Question number 6. Now let's assume that we have two lines. This is line 1 and this is line 2. And this is line what? 1. The value for line 1 they say is 2y plus 8x minus 17, and the value of line 1 has what? Has these 2 points. It passes through these 2 points. So for two parallel lines, just like this one will have, their gradient m1 is always equal to what? M2. Now remember, this question is a question under coordinate geometry. I want you to go and read more on that. Now if you look at this in coordinate geometry, the gradient of line 1 is always equal to the gradient of line 2. Now we are given the equation of line 2. So the first thing we look for now is to look for the gradient of what? Line 2. And once we get the gradient of line 2, we can now use it with the formula, the gradient of the line given 2 points, to find the value of what? Of P. That is the what? That's the logic. So we are given the equation 2y plus what? Plus 8x minus 17 equal to what? 0. Now while we rearrange this equation, we're going to have our what? We're going to have our 2y plus what? Plus 8x to be equal to what? 17. So we're going to have our 2y to be equal to what? Minus 8x plus what? 17. So if we divide this by 2, we'll divide this by 2, and we'll divide this by what? By 2. This will cut this and we'll have our y to be equal to what? Minus 8 divided by 2. That will give us minus 4x plus what? Plus 17 divided by what? Divided by 2. Now I want us to compare this equation with y equal to what? Mx plus what? Plus c. Now if you compare, that's the normal equation of a straight what? Of a straight line. Since that equation is the equation of a straight line that is given to us, now we can see that our m here is equal to what? Minus what? 4. So we see that the gradient of line 2 is equal to what? Minus what? Minus 4. So what we are going to do now, we are going to now arrange this in such a way that we are going to find the what? We are going to find the value of what? Minus what? Minus b. Remember the 2 points that are given to us here. We are given minus 1 and minus b, and then we are given minus 2 and what? As 2 as the equation of a line that passes through these two what? These 2 points. Now we're going to look at the formula gradient of the line giving 2 points. The formula gradient of the line giving 2 points is equal to m is equal to what? Y what? 2 minus y1 all over what? x2 minus what? X what? 1. Why this is what? X1, this is y1. Why this is what? X2, this is y what? This is y2. So we're going to put that into this value. And remember, the gradient is what? Minus 4. So we are going to have our what? Minus 4 to be equal to what? Y2 is what? 2 minus y1 is equal to minus b, right? All over what? X2 is what? X2 is minus 2, right? Minus x1 is equal to bracket minus what? 1. Good. So that will give us what? That will give us our minus 4 to be equal to what? This and this will give us what? 2 plus b, right? All over what? Minus 2. Minus times minus will give us minus 2 plus what? Plus 1. Fine. So minus 2 plus 1 will give us what? That will give us minus 4 equal to what? 2 plus p all over what? Minus 1. So what we'll do here is to what? Is to cross multiply. And when we cross multiply, what will our result be? Now let's take the solution upward. Now when we cross multiply, we are going to have, we are cross multiplying those two things. We are going to have a given value. And what will the value be? Let's cross multiply. Now if we cross multiply, we are going to have minus 4 times what? Times minus 1. Minus times minus will give us what? Will give us plus. And that will give us what? Minus, this will give us minus 1 into bracket 2 plus p equal to minus 4 times what? Minus 1. Fine. This times this will now give us minus 2 minus p equal to what? This times this will give us what? 4, right? Looking at the value we just pick. This is 1, this is not minus, so we are going to adjust this to be what? We're going to adjust this to be just 1 because it's not going to give us 1. So this will give us what? This will give us plus, right? So this plus this will give us what? So our p will now be equal to what? 4 into bracket what? 2. We'll cross this side to this way to give us what? Minus what? 2. So our p will be equal to 4 minus 2. That will be what? That will be 2. So be mindful of signs because signs can jeopardize your solution. Remember, we took this for a minus sign and it's meant to be what? A positive what? A positive sign. So signs can jeopardize your result, can make you have the wrong result. So our final result is what? 2, and our answer is what? Our answer is D. Now let's look at the seventh question, question number 7. Now question number 7, let's analyze question number 7. Question number 7, we look at question number 7. Question number 7 says the ratio of the length of two similar rectangular blocks is 2:3. If the volume of the larger block is 351 centimeter cube, then the volume of the other block is what? Now we are considering two rectangular blocks. This is a question on similar triangles. Now let's assume we have a smaller rectangular block and we have a bigger rectangular block. Now they said, remember, a rectangle have its length and it has its what? Its breadth. This is the length and this is the what? This will be the what? Breadth. Now the length, the ratio of the length is what? This is what? 3 centimeter, and this is what? This is 2 centimeter. Why this is what? 3 centimeter. 2:3. Now if the volume of the larger block is what? B of this is equal to what? 351 centimeter cube, right? Now they are asking you to find the volume of the what? The smaller what? The smaller this. Now there is what we call comparing similar shape. If we are comparing similar shape, then length of small shape will also be what? Over the length of the volume of the smaller shape will be equal to the length of the bigger shape over the volume of the what? Of the bigger shape. That is what we call comparison of what? That's what we call comparison of what? Of similar shape. So the length of the smaller length, this length of the smaller volume will give us what? That will give us 2. This will give us 2 over what? Over the volume, that is V1, equal to what? The length is going to be what? 3 over the volume is equal to what? 351 centimeter what? Cube. Remember, I told you earlier on that volume is in what? Volume is in cube. So when we cross multiply, we are going to have our V1 times 3 to be equal to what? 351 centimeter cube times what? Times 2. Now if you multiply that, you are going to have what? 702 centimeter what? Cube. So our V1 now times 3 will now be equal to 702 centimeter cube. So if you find the value of V1, V1 will now be equal to what? 702 divided by what? Divided by 3, all in what? Centimeter what? Cube. Now I want you to use your calculator. You'll be allowed to do that, to divide this. If you do that, let's point your calculator. If you do that, you are going to have what? The answer 234 centimeter what? Centimeter cube. And that is exactly the value you are going to what? You're going to have. So if you check the option up there, you find out that our correct option is what? Our correct option is option A. Good. Now let's look at the final, let's look at how we'll find question number 8. Question number 8 says, find the derivative of the function y equal to 2x squared at point where x is equal to what? Minus what? 1. Now how do we go about doing this? We have our y to be equal to what? 2x squared into bracket 2x minus 1. They say you should find the derivative of the function at point where x is equal to -1. This is what we call differentiation and integration. It's under calculus. So the first thing you need to do is either you simplify these two things, or you can go about defining the derivative directly. Now, I advise you, since you're working with time, in order to avoid mistakes, let's simplify this. This will give us this times this. This times this will give us what? 4x raised to power what? 3, right? Minus 2x squared times -1. That will give us minus what? 2x what? Square. So the next thing is to look for the derivative. To look for the dy what? The x of this whole what? Of this whole value. And the dy dx of that value will give us what? 4 times what? 3x raised to power what? 3 minus 1, right? Remember the formula of differentiation I told you last time. Minus what? 2 times what? 2x 2 minus what? 1. Very good. So that will give you what? This times this will give you what? 12x squared minus this times this will give us what? 4 what? 4x. Now, this is the value we are going to get. Now, we want to look at the derivative of this value at what? At point x equal to minus what? 1. So, if our y is equal to 12x squared minus 4x, right? At point x equal to -1, our y will be equal to 12 into bracket -1 square minus 4 into bracket what? -1. So our y now will now be equal to what? -1 times what? -1. Minus times minus will give you plus. Minus times 1 will give you 1. So that will give you what? 1. So this will give you 12 minus times minus times minus will give you what? Plus, right? 4 times 1 will give you what? 4. So our y will be equal to what? 16. Very good. And you see, it's very easy. Our option there is option what? Option D. Our y is equal to what? 16. So the correct option is option what? Is option B. And that is the right what? That's the right answer to question number 8. Now let's swiftly go to question number 9. Question number 9 says correct 241.34 times bracket 3 times 10 raised to power -3 square to what? To 4 significant figure. Now I want you to note something. If you are going about doing significant figure, you should note that in significant figure, the zeros after the point are not counted as significant figures. The counting starts from any what? Real numbers like 7, 2. Take note of that. But if you are giving decimal places, the zeros after the decimal point are counted. They are decimal values. So we'll count from here and on and on. Take note of that. I want to bring that to your what? To your attention. Now let's look at how we can solve this question. Now we are told that what? 241.34 is multiplying 3 times what? 10 raised to power -3, all in bracket 2. Now remember, we want to simplify this in such a way that these values will be easily done. So let's find out the value of this. This raised to power 3, this will give us what? 241.34 into bracket. This will give us what? This is -3. That means our counting started from where? This 0, 0 and what? 3, because we have 1, 2 and what? 3. Remember, when you count, we have 0, 0, 3. you have 1, 2, and what? 3. Remember, when you count this way, you have a negative power, and when you count this way, you have a positive what? You have a positive power. So for us to have counted this way, this will give us what? 0.003, right? Raised to power what? Raised to power 2. Now that will give us that what? That value. So let's simplify that further. This will now give us what? This will now give us 241.34 times this square is going to give us 0.0000. It will do you a lot of good to use your calculator in this part, because you are giving what? A calculator. That will give you 9. So if you multiply this, you're going to have this. So if we simplify this, use your calculator to point this out, we are going to have what? We're going to have 0.0021, because this times this will give us 0.0021720 That is exactly what you are going to get. So remember that you are writing this to what? To how many significant figure? To 4 significant figure. And when you are counting your significant figures, zeros after the point are not counted. So we'll start with what? With 2, 1, 7, and what? And 2. If this number is greater than 9, if this number is greater than 5, we're going to approximate. But since it's not greater than 5, we'll discard what? We'll discard this whole value. So we are going to have our what? 0.002172, and that will be our what? Our result. And if you go back to check very well, you find out that your answer is option what? Is option D. So you see that questions like this can be very, very easy. All you need to do is to take your time to go through what? Go through them. So we've come to the final question, question number 10. You're asked to find the mean deviation of 1. You're asked to find the mean deviation of 1, 2, 3, 4, and what? And 5. Now, how do we go about solving this question? Before we can find the mean deviation, we need to find our mean. And our mean is equal to summation of fx all over what? Summation of what? Summation of f. So summation of f, remember each of these values, their frequency is 1, 1, because they are paired what? 1. So we are going to have what? We're going to have 1 times 1 plus what? 2 times 1 plus what? 2 times 3 times 1 plus what? 4 times what? 1, which is also equal to 4, divided by how many number? The frequency is what? 4. So if we add them together, we're going to have 4 plus 3 is 7, plus this, that will give you 8, 9, and what? 10. That will give you 10 over what? 10 over 4. 10 divided by 4, that will give you what? 2.5. So you see now that our bar x, which is the mean of this value, is equal to 2.5. We are not looking for the mean, we are looking for the mean what? Deviation. So what we are going to do now is our mean deviation MD will be equal to what? Summation of what? Summation of the absolute value of what? Of x minus what? By x, which is the what? Which is the mean of that value all over what? All over the frequency. And what is this value? This value is the absolute value of what? Of these two values. So for us to get the absolute value will now be what? Our mean deviation will be the absolute value of x, which is 1 minus what? 2.5, right? Plus summation 2 minus 2.5 plus summation 3 minus 2.5 plus summation 4 minus 2.5. All will be over what? Over the frequency, which is what? Which is 4. Remember, this is an absolute value. So 1 minus 2.5 is going to give us 1.5. So instead of us having 1.5, we are going to have negative 1.5. We are going to have what? 1.5 plus, because it's an absolute value. 2 minus 2 point this is going to 2.5 is going to give you minus 0.5, because it's absolute. We're going to have 0.5 plus 3 minus this will give us what? 1.5 will give us 0.5 plus what? 4 minus 2.5 will now give us what? 1. So 4 minus 2.5, 4 minus 2.5 will give us what? 2.5. All this will be over what? This. So our final result is going to be what? 1.5 plus 0.5 will give us what? Will give us 2 plus 0.5, that will give us what? 2.5 plus what? 2.5, that will give us what? That will give us a 4. That will give us a 4 divided by what? 4. And this will be equal to what? This will be equal to what? 1. So you see, the mean deviation of this value is what? Is 1. And the value A is our final what? Is our final solution. So this is how we come to an end of the first 10 questions of this of Jamb 2021 past question. Join us in the next revision class that has to do with question number 11 to what? 20. I look forward to seeing you in our next live class, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and look forward to seeing you.